Welcome to Igniting Discovery, an AUA News and Sidetracked podcast. This series is part of the AUA Innovation Nexus, an ecosystem that connects innovators, clinicians, and industry leaders to advance discovery in urology. In each episode, we hear directly from those shaping new ideas and moving innovation forward.
Hi, welcome to AUA News Inside Track. I'm Dr. Stephen Kaplan, and I am professor of urology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and also the founder and now director of the American Urologic Innovation Nexus. And I'm pretty excited to introduce and share some time with both Britton, Garrett, and Brian Hogan. And we're here to talk about the AUA Innovation Nexus program and how artificial intelligence, robotics, devices, and new therapeutics are rapidly changing care delivery. Exciting times. And we want to share them with you and share some of that excitement. So Britton and Brian, thank you for joining us. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So what I'd like to do before we entertain some questions, if each of you, and we'll start with Brian, tell us a little about yourself and the company. Both of these companies, by the way, presented at the AUA Innovation Nexus, and I'm incredibly happy about how both companies are doing. As an aside, and I don't know if Britton or Brian, you knew this, but since people have presented, we've now had 3 years of companies presenting at AUA Innovation Nexus. There's been almost, for those companies, $300 million raised by those companies, $300 million. So obviously we're making an impact, and we don't take credit for helping you raise the money, maybe a little bit. But the point is that we hope that presenting at AUA Innovation Nexus helped with some of that. So Brian, tell us a little about your company, and then Britton, please follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the exposure that we got is significant, and I know we'll go into some of that. So Brian Hogan, I am the CEO of Fellow. So Fellow has been around since 2018. We are essentially a mail-in semen analysis for men, and the company was founded on the idea that men are very bad about going to the doctors, very bad about testing in any manner. And we have three main products. We have a post-vasectomy semen analysis test. We have a full semen analysis test. And we have a full semen analysis test with cryopreservation. And that is all done in us sending kits to patients, whether that's directly through a clinic or direct to consumer. They provide produce a sample at home. They send that package back to us, to our lab in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we process that sample. If it's a full semen analysis, we will process it overnight. We've got a proprietary preservation solution and an algorithm that we can look at motility from up to 52 hours back to and make the relationship to a fresh sample. And we publish some fertility and sterility on that. And then quickly on the post-vasectomy semen analysis test, we can look at that up to 10 days. So the company is a Series B private company. We raised that last year. And again, a lot of that came from the exposure received from the Innovation Nexus conference. And we are just continuing to grow and broaden our coverage throughout clinics and also direct consumer.
That's great. And Britton, tell us a little bit about AUA Urology.
Yeah, so Britton Garrett, CEO of AUA Urology, one of the proud original cohort of the Innovation Nexus. It really was a jumping off point for us. So our narrative is really around diagnostics, and objective data is critical to good decision making, but it needs to be shared, and the fact that the patient needs to be bought in and understand why their disease matters. So we have a at-home, very similar model, from a standpoint of Fellow, to really enabling physicians and patients to speak the same language, understand their urinary output, how it's affecting their overall health, and really bring together that moment in the clinic where that decision can start to move the patient through the continuum in a much more accelerated and appropriate way. So the Nexus, I think, as we think about what it means to us, we were able to meet two of the strategics that are in our cap table at that event. Really was the foundation of the kickoff of our Series A, which was quite successful. And again, will be another opportunity for us to tell that story when we're together at the Nexus this year for the Series B. So we're excited to continue to be a partner in that overall ecosystem and bring other startups along by sharing what we've learned and how we can help them find their path just like ours.
So what I love about both your companies is you challenged the norm. So not that long ago, and certainly when I was training, but certainly not that long ago, the thought of having to do a seam analysis and coming to the office and all this stuff around there. And you challenged that, Brian, and now people can do it at home. And there's a lot of other things that and other data that you guys are working on besides just a seam analysis. And Britton with IO Urology, the notion of a flow rate, you have to do it in the office. And what we've learned is certainly multiple measurements are better than a single measurement. It kind of makes sense, whether it's blood pressure or heart rates. And for those of us who walk around with Apple Watches and Oura rings, and certainly I won't show you the other body parts that I'm monitoring because it's a PG podcast. But the point is, you both challenged the norm, and that's the exciting part of it. Which leads me to my next question. There's been an incredible amount of innovation going on, and it seems like urology, particularly, is on the fast track. So when we first started this, there were 10 companies who, including Britton, your company, and actually Brian, your company as well, and the 10 companies who presented, and we gradually increased from 10 to 12 to 14 last year. This year we have 43 companies presenting. 43. People looked and said 43. I mean, it really is amazing. So Britton and then Brian, what do you think is different about now? Why do you think now there's just been an incredible explosion in urologic innovation?
Well, I think those that came before us set a good table, right? We had some really successful companies developing technology that really has shown in whether it's through exits or inside of existing portfolios like Boston Scientific, that a full suite of urologic technology can be a significant growth driver for these companies. So I think that flywheel started spinning with some of the early successes, and I think the Nexus is really built on that, right? What was missing to me was the platform to be able to bring forward the message. When you bring people together in an environment where sharing of information is occurring in a natural way, and at the same time, some sidebar wonderful conversations can occur, you can really start to increase that level of innovation because capital is available, right? We all know there's great ideas, but oftentimes us early stage companies struggle to find a way to connect the dots through that journey. And I think the Nexus was really a foundational starting point for us. And you see that, I think everything that you just articulated is evidence that we're doing a pretty good job.
Brian?
Yeah, I would add, I would echo that. And as I think about the AUA Nexus, and last year I was able to be there as we talked about and provided an update, just from that point of the 2 years. But absolutely that forum and that opportunity that is specific to these companies that are getting started or innovating versus being in the exhibit hall, which is, what traditionally you would have, and everyone is there and everyone's talking about how great their thing is, but it's really showing and showcasing these companies that I think what resonated with me, and I actually went back to our presentation from 2023, which is again prior to me being there, and just thinking about how much we've grown. And I totally agree, it was a stepping off point for us. It really brings that to the forefront. And the other thing that I would add, and just from my 20 years in life science and my backgrounds in finance and operations, it's what got me excited and about the opportunity to just be in the space. And this is my first time in fertility, but it's just, there is so much opportunity and there's so much creativity from a science perspective that's out there. And so really narrowing that and giving companies and founders the opportunity to pitch in that type of environment, which is incredibly friendly. And because obviously you're up there for a few minutes, but I found that it was just this group of people that, whether they'd done it before or were new to it, I could really feel that just positive vibe there, in being there last year for sure.
Yeah. So, I've been I've had, as you have, interesting successes in the commercial world. I don't have any specific training. I'm not an MBA. I don't have any of that training. I maybe have some street smarts, and that's about it. But about to launch my second public company, and I'm part of a venture fund. So I see a lot of things coming my way, and I review things. And there's a lot of buzzwords, and people keep pitching and throwing things around. So let's kind of explore, where do you think are kind of the hot areas? Obviously, we've touched upon some of them, but maybe talk a little bit AI, digital health, some of the device areas. Where do you think we're getting some real traction, either clinically or commercially, from your perspective? And Brian, we'll let you start with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything you said, obviously, and those are absolutely the buzzwords. If I think of what we're doing, and we actually had a half-day strategic meeting yesterday with our board. And one of the biggest things for me in the CEO role is ensuring that we stay focused, because we still have so much runway in the urology space as well as the fertility space with our base products. But we want to continue to be growing. I think that there's just the data analytics and predictive analytics, beyond these wearables and things like that. We've now, since 2023, I look back, we had analyzed at that point about 50,000 patients from inception to 2023, April of 23. We've looked at over 275,000 patients since then, and just 30,000 patients in Q1 of this year. And so now what we want to do is be able to look at that data and understand that data more and see how can we leverage that data. And that's where we've gotten the majority of those patients to opt in to let us use some of that data. And I think this is where there's a real opportunity to see. And what we're going to do with our CMO, Jim Smith, who still practices 2 days a week at UCSF, is start to look at outcomes data, and especially on the fertility side, and what was the path of that male and what was that path of that couple going through their fertility journey. So I think that there's a real opportunity with companies amassing all of this data and then really narrowing that into some real valuable information that clinicians and patients can lean on for what it is that they need in terms of the appropriate treatments.
Well, clinical utility is important, and we just published a paper with the AUA Urology Care Path team about making it clinically valued. So, Britton, can you touch a little bit upon that? At the end of the day, that's the customer.
It is. And I think that's to me, that's one of the most important areas, I think, is we are all in the healthcare ecosystem being forced into really proving what value are we creating, right? Because the stakeholder group that I think we all see that's gaining more and more directional power in the system is the payers. And if you think about what it is that they want to see outcomes. They want to see how these technologies aren't just replicating something that's gone before them and following along. It's opening up the narrative around what can be done when you unlock new views of information. And we're sitting at the forefront of that. And like the paper showed, there is so much positivity in fully understanding something versus just having these little snapshot views. But when you unlock the true understanding of urologic output and volume over the course of a 48-hour period, just like the data showed, you start to uncover people that maybe shouldn't be in urology, that may have been this masked group that was causing some of our negative outcomes that we saw in some of the modalities that have come to the market in the past with surgical intervention, and kind of that topping off that we often see in a lot of these surgical interventions, that they struggle to really grow the market. And I think a lot of that is because the wrong patients find themselves over time into that pool, and it shrinks the ability to be successful with those technologies. So I think clearly the diagnostic world is one that I'm partial to, but I think that outcomes will be what drives the day as we go forward, because we're all going to be challenged as resources become more constrained to show how we're improving outcomes, and that those publications are critical for success in the future.
So now I'm going to have you both put on your mentoring hat. And we've talked about successes, and both of you have had great successes and will no doubt have continued success. But only 2 out of 100 startups make it. So we're talking about all the good stuff, But the reality in the world of startups and new companies, most fail. So where are the areas that we need to be a little bit skeptical? And the warning, if you will, the warnings you would give some of our newer companies as they start out. So I'll have Britton, if you can start, and then Brian, please.
Yeah, I think, it's always easy to fall in love with your baby, right? We got to these places because we love our idea. The reality is challenging that idea and really taking what you learn in a way that enables that learn to turn into a pivot that opens up the door for the next step in the journey. It's not always obvious what that is, but I do think that flexibility and pliability is so critical as founders of great potential technologies. And it's a pitfall sometimes that I see early founders, especially when you hear them pitch their opportunity to an investor, they tend to mostly focus on what they do and not necessarily the value that they're creating or the problem they're solving or whose life they're making better. And I think that my lookout for most is that that's what's important. And early on, learning is the most important thing in all of these things. And learns happen not in the lab or not in the product development, just inside of your company. They happen out with people like yourself and with the customers and with the patients that we're trying to change their lives. So I think that's just one of the big lookout areas that I think we have to really hone in to see, is this individual that's often a technical founder capable of truly understanding the world to which they want to change? And do they have the capacity to let that show itself to them?
Brian?
Yeah, I think these companies are, of course, grounded in science, and that's incredibly important. Um, but understanding the end game earlier is incredibly important in terms of what is that market that you're going to serve. How big is that market? Is there somebody already doing something, whether it's standard of care? How hard is it going to be to change that treatment paradigm? This has been one of the things in several companies I've been in that it's worked or not. So those are some of the key components. At the end of the day, again, sounds a bit cliche. It's going to be that product or products, and it's then going to be the team. And can that team execute? And I've seen it so many times where you have this great idea, quote unquote, great product, but the teams are, and I'm visually saying, going different directions. Or you have that team that's working very well together and challenging each other. And those are the things that I can see. And so it seems very simple, but finding those right puzzle pieces is incredibly important. And that's where I've seen success in the handful of companies that I've been at that have worked, and where it's not worked at other companies because of that team.
Yeah, what I've found listening is important, and learning. You don't know everything. And what I learned pretty early on is that even though I had these ideas and companies that I'd started multiple companies, and I know what I don't know. And I recognize very early what I don't know. And I was never going to be a CEO. That's just not my skill set. You have that, and Britton, you have that. I don't, and I recognize I need to build around me and fill in the gaps of the things that I don't know. And I put ego aside, because I could say, "Well, it was my idea, and I'm going to take the company." It would have died on the vine, and I recognize that, and that's okay. But my strength was coming up with the ideas and then building a team, and that's okay as well. And that's what I think people should hear. Know what you don't know. You don't know everything, and actually, we don't know actually most of things. And we have our strengths, and hone in on that, whatever that is, and then build a team around you. So let's talk a little about money, because ultimately, where our venture, and you've had to raise money and lost a lot of sleep. We all do, kind of raising money, and certain areas are just throwing money at it. AI is certainly, and most people don't even know what AI is. They just use two initials and they just throw money at it. But from an investor perspective, there's always the cool tech factor, and it's kind of sexy and all that stuff. And then they look at the team. But where do you think potentially are areas that investors are looking at? It may not be so flashy, may not be the AI, but where the opportunities are, and important for the people out there with some of their ideas, realistically, where the opportunities. So, Brian, what do you think?
Yeah. In the diagnostic space, that total addressable market is going to be very important. If there's opportunities in screening, very important as well. Reimbursement challenges also. So, Fellow is essentially a cash-based business. We do have coverage from Maven and Progeny. But I've been at other companies where we've had to do our own and go down our own path from a managed care perspective and show clinical utility. And that's millions of dollars in years to happen. Investors are not as likely or having the appetite of late to do that. And I get it, unless it is that earlier stage screening. I came from a space that Genomic Health then was acquired by Exact, and Cologuard, which was a screening product, which is an alternative to colonoscopy. That market opportunity is massive. And so there are many companies trying to come into that space, including Garden Health. If you can get into those types, there's absolutely opportunity. So it's that addressable market. It's how hard is it going to be to prove out, and how hard is it going to really grow market share, and are there's others in the space. So it's various factors that go into it, and then again, obviously anchored on that science as well.
Yeah, I would kind of piggyback where, I just came out of LSI, which for any startup that wants to get exposure to a lot of the people that you're seeking to have understand your narrative, it's a really good place to do that. But in hearing what those investors were saying, and obviously hearing folks on the podiums, I think it's very clear that there is incremental technology improvement that absolutely gets funded if it's on the right track and someone has set a good stage, and a fast follower has the ability to potentially, grab on a piece of that or improve upon what's there, right? We've seen that in the cardiac space quite a bit. I think then there's these other, the kind of the moonshot opportunities where you have something that is in a disruptive kind of opportunity, sometimes hiding in plain sight, right? I mean, if we think about what Brian and his team are doing, it makes a lot of sense. It's, not to strip anything away from what he's doing or what I'm doing, but at the end of the day, we're not, this isn't rocket science, but it is taking a need and finding a unique way of unlocking that need. So I think that there's kind of those two distinct buckets that I hear investors talk a lot about, where you've got the incremental improvement with a clear pathway with a lot less risk, and then you have the big opportunities. And the investor type is going to be the groups that will give you the money, are the groups that you need to identify of what it is in their thesis that likes what you're doing. Because I think if I've learned anything that I could push forward, it's that every investor, just like a company, has a very specific thing that they're trying to accomplish. And you need to understand that very, very explicitly to make sure you're talking to the right person. Because if you're not, the likelihood of success really isn't there. And we all have a very limited amount of time. So let's not waste it.
Yeah, and I think commercialization, people don't understand the value of that. It's particularly for device companies or medication. They think once I get my FDA approval, that's just the beginning of the story. It's commercialization that's important, because if you ain't going to get paid for it, it's done. And I think that's what's really important. We learned through another company we're involved with, which is originally going to be an informatic thing for patients, a personalized information. I thought, okay, that's good, but who's going to pay for that? Will people pay for that? Will healthcare industries? But then we turned it into a creation where we decreased the inbox burden for clinicians and health providers. It was like, oh, okay. Now we understand how that can help. So I think that's what sometimes people forget, is that you can have a great idea, makes a lot of sense and could impact. But if you ain't going to get paid for it, then you ain't going to get investment on it. And I think that that's important. So in the last few minutes as we close, and this will be a little bit of an advertisement, I guess, for AUA Innovation Nexus. And again, I appreciate both of you. You were there from the get-go. You've been great supporters and continue to be great supporters. In terms of Nexus now, what do you think are the opportunities? What does it unlock that it didn't exist before? And where do you think we go with this? And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe an opportunity for our audience here as well. So where do you think we can go with this? And where do you see it maybe in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I'll lead off. I really think where Nexus is going is it's providing a continuity of the journey, right? We started with more of an early stage, and then from there, we figured out the next step in the process. I now see Nexus really helping guide folks to better understand the whole journey, and then surrounding them with the needed assets and the people in the room that enable them to hopefully get there faster and more successfully. I also think that the mentorship and the flywheel spinning, because people like Brian and myself are helping other founders think through some of the things that they're dealing with that we've already dealt with, is highly valuable. So I truly see Nexus and the AUA playing a role in that, because they have the ability to help foster this innovation through their participation and through their guidance, because they have a lot of the knowledge that a lot of startups need. To your point, the roadmap to the destination isn't always obvious, but there are people along the way that probably know where you need to go. And so the more that Nexus can surround us with those kind of folks, I think the more success we have, and the virtuous cycle just continues. And who knows, maybe we'll start to outsource this to other specialties because they might need it as well.
Brian?
Yeah, I echo that, and that ecosystem and got to see that in action last year. We had a video of an update, but then as I was sitting there and listening to people presenting, and then during the breaks talking to people that were just there, being able to make some connections for fellow, but also, Britton's absolutely right on, and that's what's exciting is those who have gone through it, you'll have experiences, and you forget it sometimes that others are sitting there going, I don't know what to do here. And so if you can help that person or people move through that a little bit quicker, that's phenomenal. And I can think about, in my journey, having been able to tap into that in a few different places, but having that within this ecosystem that's been built over the last few years, which is clearly growing, as you referenced, 40 something companies presenting this year. That's incredibly exciting.
Right, and we know this is kind of working, notwithstanding the amount of companies that are presenting, notwithstanding how much money's been raised for those companies. Other subspecialty societies are coming to us, and how we did it. The urogynecologists have reached out to us, and it's a natural partnership in terms of doing that. And one of the things I think that Nexus did differently, a lot of people started with an investment arm, but there was no infrastructure. We did it the other way. We built it bottom up. So build a foundation, get traction, get partnerships, and then build upwards and then partner. And one of the things that we're going to be doing, and hopefully announce this year, and then more next year, is an investment opportunities. So people will be able to invest, and I think that they'll hopefully have some trust in terms of what we're doing, and they see the successes. And I think urologists trust urologic companies. One of the mistakes people make in their investment world is, or creating things, is not in their space. I'm not a food guy. I'm a vegetarian, and I'm not going to start a restaurant business. I don't know anything about it. So I think staying in your lane. So a couple less things. So I'm going to do like kind of a lightning style close. So I'm going to make a statement, and each of you just give me a statement to close this. So Britton, one mistake founders should avoid is
not listening to those around you that have experience.
Okay, Brian, one trend that will define the next few years?
AI, absolutely.
Okay, and I'm going to quote somebody else about one thing clinicians should pay attention to. And John McConnell, one of my mentors, used to be the chair at UT Southwest Urology and then Wake Forest. He told me this: the things that piss you off every day. He said, God, I wish I could do that. Well, then come up with an idea to do that. And I think those are the things that can actually help. So I wanted to thank both of you. I'm really proud of both your companies, and AUA Nexus having a small part of it. And hopefully we'll have more companies in the future. And if you want to learn more about AUA Innovation Nexus, please go to auanexus.org. Remember, our meeting this year is in Washington on the Thursday before AUA. And join us, and hopefully your company will be one that will present in the future. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Igniting Discovery, an AUA News and Sidetracked podcast from the AUA Innovation Nexus. To learn more about the Innovation Nexus and how to get involved, visit auanexus.org.